Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of The Great Debate, a 10-part webinar series where two guests debate whether a cybersecurity topic should be the top priority right now. Before we get to today's debate, a few operational items. First, today's session is being recorded and we'll send a link to the recording shortly after the webinar wraps up. Next, there are several opportunities for today's guests to cover audience questions. You can add your question using either the chat or the question panel within GoToWebinar. You'll also notice a poll right now asking you whether you're in favor or opposed to the statement. Security awareness training is the #1 cybersecurity priority right now. We'll tally the results and we'll ask again at the end to see if either of our guests changed their mind about the topic. Finally, we'll be making a $500 donation to each of today's speakers to a charity of their choice. And with that, I'm going to share the poll results and hand it off to our moderator, Axonius CMO Nathan Burke, to get started.
Okay, so it looks like we're at 70% in favor, 30% opposed. Okay, and we're gonna, at the end of this, we're gonna check it again, see if we've changed any minds here. So thanks, Anna. But before we get started on this, I wanted to share this. This is exciting news. We can now officially call this an award-winning series because just last week, the Great Debate Series won an award for the most creative cybersecurity marketing campaign. So from now on, this is the award-winning Great Debate. All right. So with that said, let's
and congratulations on that, just so you know.
Well, thank you, and thank you for being part of it. So, all right. Today's topic is: should security awareness training be the #1 priority right now? And our first guest taking the in favor position is Catherine Goldman. So Catherine's the CEO and founder of Cybermaniacs, an innovative cyber awareness company and director of development for the Ladies of London Hacking Society, with 20 years in the IT trenches, working with a range of organizations from trailblazers in the Naughties, I might have got that wrong, to global organizations grappling with transformation and agilities. She still sees people at the heart of change. She is currently an NED and advisor to startups in the UK and US, speaks internationally on leadership, cybersecurity, and technology change topics. So Catherine, please tell our audience about the charity you're supporting and correct me if I got any of that wrong.
No, that was awesome. Thank you. I am supporting the Ladies Hacking Society, which now has, I think, 4 branches in the UK and plans for global domination. We basically started this 2 years ago as a meetup, just a way to get women involved in cybersecurity, to create a space that was sort of like a book club meets hacking club with wine and computers, so that women could start exploring technical skills and do it in a way that's fun and interesting and free for everybody. So we support, there's probably about 100 to 200 women who come to meetings on a regular basis, and we have over 3,000 people on our meetup list in London. So this is obviously something that's big and growing, and we're getting lots of support. So I just wanted to chip into them to provide some either technical resources or additional mentorship services for our members.
Excellent. So thank you for joining us today. And taking the opposing position today is Karen Walsh, and Karen is a data-driven compliance expert focused on cybersecurity and privacy, who believes that securing today's data protects tomorrow's users. Her work includes collaboration with security analysts and ghostwriting for C-suite level security leaders across a variety of internal and external vulnerability monitoring solutions. As a lawyer, she is deeply knowledgeable about security and privacy laws and industry standards, including GDPR, CCPA, and ISO. She's been published in the ISACA Journal and is writing a book for Taylor and Francis about cybersecurity for small and mid-sized business. So, Karen, please tell us about your charity.
Well, you make me sound way more interesting than I really am in real life. My charity is Black Girls Code, which is an organization that empowers girls of color ages 7 to 17 to become innovators in STEM fields. And I feel that it's really important for us to reach out and make sure that we're getting everyone the resources they need, especially kids. So there you go.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So today's topic, as we mentioned, is security awareness training. And to give a bit of context on the topic, I'm going to hand it over to Noah Simon, who is the Director of Product Marketing here at Axonius. So Noah, go for it.
Thank you. Security awareness programs are focused on influencing the security behaviors of employees through education and training. Awareness training stems from the fact there is no perfect cybersecurity protection for everything, and that people are frequently on the front lines in the effort to protect against potential security incidents. There are a few main goals that security awareness programs aim to accomplish. The first is driving behavioral change. You can measure this over time by tracking things like the percentage of employees that click simulated phishing emails and other metrics that I'm sure we'll discuss soon. The second is ensuring regulatory compliance. Awareness training is a common component in many security frameworks and regulations. For instance, the HIPAA security rule requires organizations to implement a program that ensures security awareness training for all staff members. And third, enhancing employee knowledge. This is done through personal training or by using learning management systems to educate employees on cybersecurity and to make them aware of common attack behaviors and hacking activities. There are different solutions that organizations use as part of awareness training programs. The first are security awareness platforms. These are dedicated platforms for security awareness training that offer a holistic platform to manage all aspects of training, including the content delivery, reporting metrics, and integrations with other corporate learning systems. There are also security awareness content development and delivery platforms, and these are vendors that offer unique approaches to developing security awareness content or new ways to distribute content to end users. There's also dedicated phishing simulation and response platforms, which are platforms that simulate phishing attacks and focus specifically on phishing training. They often have close integrations with email security systems. And finally, there are security training as managed services, which includes companies that offer security awareness training as cloud-hosted subscriptions. These typically include workflows and a library of modules that can be chosen to deliver security awareness campaigns. And with that summary, back to you, Nate.
All right, thank you, Noah. So here we go, on to the debate. And the format is as follows. So each candidate will have 2 minutes to make their opening statements. After the opening statements, I will read 5 submitted questions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer. We will then go on to the final remarks and then open the floor to any questions you have. So as Anna mentioned, feel free to add your questions in the question functionality here in GoToWebinar. So this morning I flipped a coin. It made me change the order on all my slides. It shows I really did this.
Drum roll.
And so Catherine will be going first.
Oh, geez.
So I have my official timer right here. So Catherine, you have 2 minutes to make your opening statement on why security awareness training should be the top priority in cybersecurity right now, and go.
So, hi everybody, good to see you. So I think because I run a cybersecurity awareness company, perhaps I'm slightly invested in this answer, so we'll take everything with a grain of salt. But look, from what we've seen, the statistics before this whole remote working 2020 COVID experiment, corona apocalypse, pandemic that we are currently in, started, the stats around this were really kind of shocking. And I think that we've been banging our heads on this for 5 to 10 years, and we haven't really seen the innovation or haven't really seen substantial change in these areas. And I think that's fair enough because humans are tricky. And this is the part of the problem that everyone wants to go, we'll get to that later, or maybe we can get just enough tools and fancy technology around it that we don't have to deal with these pesky humans anymore, and we'll figure out a way around it. And, I'm not convinced of that. I think humans are going to be the center of the organization going forwards. We're going to be using them for different things. So when you smash where we were, which wasn't great, into COVID, remote working from home, cloud adoption, digital transformations, all this stuff, plus these macro forces of where's the workforce going and how are demographics changing, and how is work itself changing, right? In terms of knowledge workers and information and data as the new oil, even if you buy into that or don't buy into it, where is all this stuff coming together? And I think what we believe at the end of the day is that humans and what humans are going to be doing in the future isn't this repetitive kind of cognitive tasks. right? That's the stuff that got us through the industrial area. What we're going to be doing is complex tasks, rapid decision-making, innovation, creativity, smashing all this stuff together in all sorts of new fields. And we have to have a workforce that's ready for that. So the thing that we're trying to tackle is, how do you get your workforce on the same page? How do we get them thinking, believing, feeling cybersecurity? We think it's absolutely the top priority in cybersecurity today. 80% of breaches have a human cause at the root. Malicious insiders are absolutely brutal. Hackers are not coming after your hardware, they're coming after your humanware, and you need to be prepared.
All right. And Karen, your time starts now.
So I come at security awareness training from a different perspective than a lot of other people, although probably not Catherine. I spent 11 years teaching first-year college writing. And one of the biggest problems I have with the majority of trainings that we see is that, and notice that I don't say education, is that they're not rooted in best teaching practices. For adults specifically, I think a lot more organizations need to think about focusing on adult learning theory when they're talking about cyber awareness. The need to know, how providing context and explaining the benefit. The learner self-concept. How many adult learners resist didactic teaching? They don't like being told what to do because they're adults and they're grown-ups and they're not kids anymore. The role of their experience and how they approach something comes from what they've done in the past. A readiness to learn. Adults want to learn when they understand the reason for it. Orientation to learning should be problem-based or task-centered, not just, sitting and watching a screen. And motivation, get inside your employees' brains, not inside your employees, that would be weird, inside your employees' brains and understand what motivates them. So I think we need to move away from security awareness training to security awareness education based on these principles. And that's the first step to building a more cyber aware user. And a lot of the larger vendors that we see, and we've all used them, there's one of my old companies used KnowBe4 and others, they don't base what they're teaching in practice. They don't base it in pedagogical, or I think for adults it's andragogical or something, theories. So organizations need to ensure that that awareness doesn't stop when the training or education is over. They also need to give end users supplement with the tools that make the end users engage in the behaviors that they need to engage in.
All right, perfect. Okay, so let's get into the questions. Remember, each guest has 2 minutes to answer these. Question number 1. So spending on security awareness training has been increasing, especially as you mentioned with the shift to remote work, yet phishing still remains one of, if not the most common attack vector today, and employees continue to do things like clicking on malicious email links. And the question is, are investments in security awareness training actually paying off? And so Karen, we'll start with you.
I think your statistics there pretty much prove that the investments currently are not paying off. But I'm not sure that I can say that's the end users or even leadership's fault when you stop and think about it. So it's that human element. You can't stop people from having emotions, or responding based on a fight or flight response, because that is just what we are born with. That is how we respond to other things. And that's what phishing preys upon. When I was prepping for this whole great debate, I'm a knowledge person, I'm a resource person, and there was a March 2020 article in the journal Cybersecurity called Predicting Individuals' Vulnerability to Social Engineering in Social Networks by Alblady and Weir. And it talked about how people who lock down their Facebooks and keep it into people they know and they have the privacy settings set, they are less likely to be phished. They are less likely to be victims of social engineering. So it really does boil down to the things I was talking about earlier, getting to your employees where they are. And a lot of the current trainings that we have out there don't really do that. And then I think you also have to incorporate the processes and technologies with the people, like we talk about in cybersecurity. Put processes in place. Tie cybersecurity awareness to, end of year reviews. did somebody's computer have a malware on it? Well, then you're not really practicing what we're trying to get you to practice to keep us safe. And, tying it to giving employees the useful technologies, not just chucking things at them. Oh, here's another technology, try it, but something that they know how to use. I wouldn't expect a kid to submit homework without a computer online. Let me try that again. I wouldn't expect a kid to be forced to submit homework online without a computer. Then why are we asking people to make really complex passcodes and not giving them the technology to enforce that and enabling them?
Okay. And let me just reset. And Catherine.
So I think we're in a really tough space because not only are we not spending enough, nearly enough, we're not investing enough in security awareness. What we are spending is totally not working at all. I think right now, cybersecurity market's like what, $300 billion globally, rough-ish. And cyber awareness or training your users or your people is only a $1 billion market. So for me, there's a huge like disconnect there, which is like tools are not going to solve the problem. We keep on taking this big technology hammer and trying to smash it against nails that don't exist, right? So on many levels, this isn't working. We're not investing enough. The stuff that we are investing in is totally an old solution for a new problem. I think we're stuck in a tick box exercise. We are stuck in once and done, auditable knowledge acquisition, short-term memory. I mean, it seems to me like the outcome of many products on the market today is like, okay, well, can my users take a slide deck and memorize the definition of malware and spit it back to me within 5 minutes? Great, now I'm cyber secure. And we all know that's like totally not true, right? So it's like we're not getting ROI because we're aiming at the wrong things. I don't want to train users. I want them to learn. I want them to have a profound experience. I want them to have a positive mindset shift. I want them to take responsibility for their own digital security and then help them interact with technology change and IP and corporate data assets and policy and all that stuff in a different way. So it's not like I want them to be aware. They can't only be aware. They have to actually care. And what follows from that mind shift about what are we doing and what are we after here, as Karen said in her intro, is like it's a radically different set of measurements that prove at the highest level how you are maturing your cyber awareness or your cyber education program. It's, I think we have to look at this completely differently in terms of what am I spending? Am I spending on the right things in the right way?
Okay, I think that segues nice to this question. Which is, so ultimately, like you were saying, security awareness training is really about changing security behavior. And that doesn't happen overnight. It can take months or years to be able to yield a measurable improvement in employee security behavior. And so the question is, with attack methods and techniques evolving so quickly, is training still reducing risk in the grand scheme of things? And how are you able to measure that? And so we will start here with Catherine.
Oh, so I think, look, if you're going to deliver your training as the majority of the market does, and I think at this point it's like 50% of all overall organizations deliver some type of awareness training, which might include like, Jane from the front desk doing a lunch and learn, like with a slide deck handed down from somebody. So it could be any bit of fun. And only 23% of small businesses are doing this. If you deliver it once a year in like a 40-minute slide deck of death, or if you use the same training videos over and over again to sweat the asset, as it were, then no, you're not reducing risk at all. I would actually argue you're increasing risk because you're ticking off your employees. And when we do informal polls, I don't have any science around this yet. I have an idea about sticking people in MRI machines and measuring pain responses, but that's another story when I don't have a timer on. But, like you're ticking off your employees. Most companies, and I think we can all like hands up go, there are lots of reasons for this. I'm not going to get into it, but we've all rolled out bad policy, stuff that wasn't written in human language, that was written by the compliance officer because of legal ramifications, and everyone just jammed it through, right? And we've rolled out training and programs that are painful to employees. They're beyond boring. They're just bad. And here's the thing is like, it's creating cognitive and emotional friction, which is an anathema to any change program. So look, we know enough now about human behavioral change and what motivates people. And we know enough about marketing economics and neuroscience. And we understand more and more every day how humans tick, what makes them work, what motivates them. And we're also in a great spot because we're in like technology innovation, cloud adoption. We're able to deliver these new programs in tons of different ways. So, you know, here at my company, we try to be at the forefront of that. But this is about continual learning and micro learning and just in the flow learning and being able to nudge people and being able to train the right people in the right context in the right way. And you can't do that with one program for everybody. You can't do that with one slide deck. And I know it's cheaper, but it's not effective. And so companies are going to have to come to a decision point relatively soon of, are we actually going to put some money into this and do it the right way? Or are we going to sweat the asset and get terrible outcomes and be at risk for a number of different human-based problems?
Okay, same question, Karen.
So there are things I agree with that Catherine said, and there are things that I think we need to expound upon a little bit differently. For example, I totally agree that one 45-minute slide deck of death is never going to work. I was a teacher for long enough to know that a slide deck of death actually causes kids in the back row to fall asleep. I've been there, believe it or not. And it's not going to be any different with employees. They're people. But the flip side of that is, I think you have to find a way to scale it, especially for the large enterprise. And you can't do it once a year. You have to do it continuously. There's a new threat every like 6 days, basically. How do you explain to your end users and your employees, oh, look, here's another cybersecurity threat, you know, make sure you don't click a link. It's not always going to be clicking a link. You know, sometimes it's going to be, you know, going to a website and not realizing maybe you should change your cookies on your browser. Every time you go to a website, should you maybe double check that you only are getting the cookies you want? And employees and end users don't know those things. Maybe they don't care. Maybe they just haven't been effectively trained. And when things change consistently, you know, if we're going to continuously monitor for external vulnerabilities and internal access, then we, oh my goodness, my hair, then we have to, you know, continuously monitor, you know, what end users and employees know. And it's not even just your employees. What about the people outside your organization who are your contractors? You can't control them either. So it has to be about continuously giving information, continuously reaching out to employees and contractors and whoever touches your network. I can count on less than one hand the number of companies that I've worked with as a contractor who require multi-factor authentication. I have one client that has used Duo out of the many that I've worked with. And I have only one that I've ever worked with that supplied me a password manager. You know, those are things that you can do that also supplement and enable the end users at the end of the day. So I think we have to include training, but we have to turn it into education. We have to do it continuously, and we have to make sure we're enabling.
Okay. All right, so this is a question that we've asked on every episode so far, and I really like this one. So as a CISO, or if you're advising a CISO, if you were given an additional headcount and $1 million to dedicate to security awareness training, where would you start? Where would you put it? So the idea is, for the in favor candidate, what would you advise someone to start with specifically as it relates to security awareness training? And for the opposition candidate, what would you prioritize instead? So Karen, you first.
Okay. I mean, I've talked about it a little bit. Obviously, I'm a little bit passionate. You know, I'm a fan of, once you educate someone, you have to enable them after the educational experience has ended. So what would I invest in? I would invest in password management tools for every employee, hands down. I would invest in access security so that somebody has to log into a platform before they can get to your applications. I would invest in security keys to stop account takeovers so that employees aren't always worried about things, or even, you know, passwordless authentication. And most importantly, I would support quarterly education programs that are done in small groups and in a hands-on way. Okay, Black Hat USA 2016 had a Dungeons, Dragons, and Security session where it was a role-playing game that had a group of people as attackers and a group of people as defenders. That gets your employees to better understand, because role-playing has almost, you know, always helped people gain empathy, and empathy helps you learn better. You know, another report that I scanned today, because I like research, was by Tessian, and they were saying that human errors, 45% of people surveyed admitted to making mistakes. And then the final analysis mentioned was that there's no one size fits all training. We've got different generations with different levels of digital nativeness and sophistication in our workforce today. Young people, millennials, younger than that, they know certain things, like they can handle social media. They may not be able to handle, you know, enterprise applications as well. You know, then you have your Generation X. Excuse me for that. I didn't put myself in there at all. And we approach it differently because we were on that analog digital cusp. The problem is, how do you effectively scale some of these things as the enterprise grows? And I think that's where we have to really start to focus more specifically on meeting our employees where they are and the knowledge they have. And
Okay.
that's what I would throw money at. Lots of money.
All right. Same question, Catherine.
Okay, so I agree with Karen in terms of tools and enablement. I think that is absolutely an important thing to give to your employees. I think we're big on that. We're big on supporting people's journey towards personal digital security, creating that mindset and that skills shift that's absolutely critical. And I also think that doing it in an autonomous way that Karen was talking about in terms of adult learning is really important. So we've actually built our platform around those principles. But first, like where I would start is understanding who your people actually are. And I've got a lot of theories and some blogs that I've written around why we avoid that in terms of cybersecurity as an industry. I think it's a Pandora's box. We don't want to touch it. And we also know that once we open that lid, we don't have the expertise ourselves internally in our teams to pick that apart. And so this is sort of like, you know, when I go to a dermatologist, I'm going for my skin. When I go to a cardiologist for the heart, it's like we're sort of like the central nervous system. But if it was a rash, we really might not know what to do with it. And so I think we have to kind of get over that uncomfortableness. We have to be comfortable in our uncomfortableness to do that. So I would say figure out what your knowledge baselines are. What are your common behavioral challenges? What do your people think and feel, which is AKA sentiment, around risk and tech and cyber and all this stuff? And there's tons of different ways to measure that. This is the stuff that matters. What are your employees doing? What environments are they actually in? What are their risk profiles based on work environment? Are they home? Are they remote? Are they office? You know, because that changes their risk profiles. Who are they? What are their roles? So we've created a competency model around this. As Karen said, you know, it's like you have to create these different tracks. So a one size fits all doesn't work anymore. Our work is too complicated. And I'm always happy to share that competency model to see how we kind of layer things in. But you have to find out who your people are and what your culture actually is. What is your risk tolerance? What are your technologies you're implementing? Have you actually sat down with your HR team to look at their workforce planning strategy? What is your percent contract worker versus employees? So this is the people side of the mapping that really needs to be done. And there's tons of stuff to do after this, but this is where you start. I would throw money at that first, do a big assessment, figure out what your structures are, who your people are, and where your security gaps really are before you design that security awareness program.
Okay, and I think this question is maybe a little bit more detailed than what you were just alluding to, which is this idea that a strong understanding of your employees' accounts and privileges and just basic security hygiene can certainly help inform security awareness training, but many teams just generally don't know how secure their employees are. So that really leads us to ask this question, which is, if you were dead set on doing security awareness training and doing it right, what are those absolute foundational challenges that you need to solve first before you can even get started? So I think you touched on that, Catherine, but we'll hand it to you first.
Cool. So I think, yeah, going back to the previous answer, you have to find out who you people are. And many people are afraid to open up that box. But in terms of absolute foundational challenges, it is understanding sort of what your people know, but it's also creating this as a system and a mechanism. So a lot of times in cybersecurity or in, in business in general, we're like, great, we'll pay a couple grand, we'll get an assessment done, we'll do the survey, and thank you very much, have a nice day. And then we hold on to that for like 4 years as if the company was the same. So when we look at how fast modern business is moving, and I can wax rhapsodic about this for hours, but the pace of business change is accelerated significantly. Regulatory change, market pressures, innovation, the R&D cycles. We're now in an agile business mode, right? Some companies are having a harder time getting there. Some companies have actually started to embrace this digital transformation, agility kind of stuff, and are trying to find the organizational policy people stuff to make the whole thing spin a little bit faster without the wheels coming off the car. So the thing is that you have to, when you set up these foundational things, you have to set them up in that agile mindset that this is a process and a system that we run all the time, because we need to understand these things all the time, because all of this is going to change. And so we keep on doing like this 3-5 year horizon. And I'm like, look, you have to plan to the horizon of predictability, which for a business could be 3, 6, 12 months. We want to run these yearly programs. That might be too long. So the first thing is to sit up and to say, how do we figure out how to support this, knowing it changes all the time, knowing our workforce is going to change. I mean, employee satisfaction's at an all-time low. Right now, we're in this kind of unemployment situation. But if you look at the general statistics around how fast people change jobs, the employees you're training today are not going to be the same employees you have in 3 years. So we have to start conceptualizing how we bring people on board, how we get them to a base level of competency, how we keep our high risk employees engaged. And so there's a whole creativity and fun and neurology thing around that. But I think it's like you have to start with understanding this isn't a once and done asset. We get to do it once a year and then thank goodness we're done. This is something you need to, teach a man to fish, and how do we support that process and system over time?
All right, great. So same question, Karen.
I was unmuting myself, sorry. So I agree with, again, I think Catherine and I have a lot of things we agree on in principle, and then there are things we sort of deviate on a little bit, which is kind of fun in a debate because you get a little bit more nuanced. So I really think that the crux of what you need to do is get your line of business level buy-in. You cannot do security awareness if it's only coming from the talking heads at the top of the organization. IT and compliance can't be the drivers. I've been the compliance person. No one likes me. They run in the opposite direction. So, and I'll give Cybermaniacs a gold star for this one. I loved what I saw from the high level. You guys are fun. There's gamification, which has totally been proven time and again to work in traditional education. People love competition, and I get that. But really, organizations only require annual trainings because they have to check an audit box, and that's all they care about. And the audits are not going to be easy to pass if you don't have actual metrics. How many people in your organization got a 70% or above? That's what they want to see. So small group education in a large enterprise means getting those managers to buy into the time it takes. They have to see cybersecurity awareness education as a productivity driver as opposed to a productivity loss. And it has to come from both the top and the bottom. You can't just say from the C-suite level or whatever, we got to do this annual training, because there's no connection to your employees. And if you can't get that cross-functional, cross-departmental agreement on security's value, nothing is going to work. No training in the world or education in the world will work. I mean, if you've got people who are sharing passwords because they need access to a resource and they can't get it, you're dead in the water. You've lost before you've even, gotten to battle. And I know I'm using like war metaphors here, but we use it all the time in cybersecurity. It's security. It's an attack. It is a war in a lot of ways. They are acts of aggression. And we have to get everyone in the organization on the front lines fighting it and have the right tools to protect ourselves.
All right, great. So question 5, this is the last question before we hand it over for final remarks and then open it up. So the title of the session was, should security awareness training be the #1 priority right now? But I think you'd both agree, and as we heard the answers throughout this debate, the answer needs to be a bit more nuanced than yes or no. And so the final question here is, what kinds of organizations should prioritize security awareness training right now? And what types of organizations should focus on other things? So Karen, this is going to start with you.
Well, right now, I mean, I'd honestly say that healthcare has to make sure they're ramping it up. I know it's hard for a lot of them right now, but, you know, I talk to people outside of just, you know, large hospitals. We're talking the sole practitioners. We're talking teletherapists. We're talking all of these people. Telehealth is going to continue after COVID. Patients like it. I don't want to spend a half an hour driving to a doctor. I'm happy telling my rash story over a video. You know, so I think we can all agree healthcare data has always and will always be a target for cyber criminals. And, you know, we need to get all of healthcare from all levels, understanding that it's everyone has to do a better job. For large corporate orgs, I really think their focus should be more along the lines of identity and access management. You're not going to, in the immediate next 30, 60, 90 days of COVID remote work at home transition, be able to cybersecurity awareness educate, you know, your entire enterprise. So there's a point at which you need to take tools and solutions that help you restrict that access and that, you know, sort of prevent an accident. When it's 45% of people say it's an accident that led them to a data breach incident, you know, you have to figure out how to prevent that accident, even if you're meeting your employees where they are.
Okay.
Oh, it's my turn to go. Right.
Yep,
So
I'm sorry.
I was waiting for Nathan to give me the green flags.
I'm sorry. I was trying to reset my timer. I just got lost there. Go ahead.
I think the timer. We're just gonna go for it. So
Right.
I think that this is what's interesting is that at a macro level, we don't have a lot of time. I think when you look at stuff from Pew Research, when you look at some of these global studies, the skill set, the knowledge, the contextual awareness, the whole realization around people's personal digital security, our lives are becoming increasingly digital. This whole thing is a dumpster fire of epic proportions. And so at a global level, we don't have a lot of time to upskill people, to change mindset, to get them to start to take responsibility, to change behavior, and to move forward. So at a company level, that's a huge challenge. But I think at a societal level, we don't have a lot of time too. So I put those in together, right? So this huge shift needs to happen. And I think you know, the question is, how do we actually do that in this context? I think budgets are going to shrink next year. Many cybersecurity divisions are going to be asked to do more with less, which is challenging because we're protecting the whole organization. And each company is different. You have to decide what you're going to do. And I think the question is really, in this area, in security awareness, you know you have to do it. So how do you accelerate? How do you get to that next level of maturity? How do you bring in either external resources? How do you look at services in a new way? How do you make sure you're using your team for the right things and not asking them to write training or write slide decks when, as Karen said, they don't have adult learning theory. They don't maybe have the expertise to write these programs. I think many people go, oh, we'll do it cheaper. We'll do it internally. And that really frustrates me from a sense because I'm like, look, it's going to take you longer. It's gonna not be as great as what it could be. It certainly will probably not be as innovative because I got a team of 20 people, including top tier creatives and adult learning theorists and cultural anthropologists and behavior marketing experts that are purposely creating content that is sticky and informative and continual and cool. And I would argue that we're probably better as a 20-person team of experts than, you know, your one intern who's trying to write slides. So it's sort of like, what can you do versus what can you upskill your staff in versus what should you outsource? What should you outsource your innovation, find some services that can help you deliver continual programs of change, right? Because if if you put the lowest cost option together from your internal team, the outcome is not going to be great and you won't be able to measure it. So that's sort of my argument, which is it should be the top priority. People should be spending money, but I know in this context, people are going to have to be spending their money wisely. Is it worth, talking to some experts about getting discounts on your shiny tech tools to add some more budget to your awareness program? I think the answer is yes, but again, grain of salt, I'm slightly biased in that area.
Okay. All right. So we will now move to the final remarks. So 2 minutes each, then we're going to do the final poll, and then we're going to leave it to the audience for questions. So last plug here for the audience, feel free to ask any questions you want right in the question functionality here. So we've got our final remarks. So we will start with you, Karen.
So I'm particularly passionate about all of this because one of the things that I hate hearing in the cybersecurity industry is when security professionals are like, all end users are the worst and they're stupid. And they're not the worst. And they're not stupid. They are not well enabled to learn, and they are not well enabled to take that learning and use it in the real world. And I believe that cybersecurity awareness education matters more than trainings, which I think is where, in the end, Catherine and I very much overlap. As a former auditor, I understand 100% the need to document your annual staff trainings and I get it from an enterprise perspective. That the best way to do it is to automate it and have a single location of documentation. The problem is it's the same as it is with standardized tests in schools. We can't say that kids in schools taking standardized tests aren't showing their true value and their true knowledge, and then say, oh, well, the cybersecurity awareness training over here, they did a multiple choice test of 3 questions, and so they are definitely secure now. You can't make those 2 statements and believe both of them at the same time. So with that in mind, I think organizations need to focus on ways that promote learning rather than just documented metrics. You need documented metrics, but you need more than documented metrics. We need to take continuous monitoring approach that we use for technical controls and apply it to cybersecurity awareness. Move away from point in time training to continuous learning and continuously reinforce that learning. Creating an organization that includes a combination of training platforms, educational hands-on sessions, appropriate employee tools, and even, a list of things that can go into a performance review to make it a holistic experience for the employee and the end user. And that is the only way to really make people cyber aware and cyber secure.
Okay. And Catherine, your final remarks.
No, fantastic. Thanks, Karen, because I think you just teed it up really well, which is you're exactly right. Holistic is one of my favorite words in this area. And I think at the end of the day, we have to look for the things that provide value to the organization and provide value to people, because humans don't use tools that aren't useful. So how do we start creating all of these things together? And so we like to say, look, it is about enabling your organization to create this change, to roll out these programs. It's about empowering your users and giving them the right tools and assessments so that they can autonomously develop mastery in these areas, whichever, if you read the research, and there's tons of research in this area, that this is the way to roll it out. It's proven that it works. So I'm always like, why don't we do it that way? Because this is obviously the way that it works. How do we engage users, right? Delivering boring content, delivering content that isn't either sticky or fun or novel or different is sort of old-fashioned. As demographics are changing, the corporate feel is kind of going the way of the dodo, and authenticity and being a bit edgy is definitely, it's not for every company for sure, but how have you tested that out, and have you measured your employees to know what they like and what they don't like? And if you want to get that change, like if you want to get your employees on board, if you want to get your digital tribes to talk to you so you understand where their skills are, what their risks are, you have to get their hearts and their minds. And I know this isn't something that we usually talk about in terms of cybersecurity, but in order to get hearts and minds, it is continual program of change. It is novel. It has to be a la minute. It has to be updated to the current cyber threats. And it has to have that quality of content that your employees will actually pay attention to. Because if you leave one poster in the break room for 3 years, no one's going to pay attention to it. But if I could deliver you a meme every week with a different joke that is actually a copy of a trending meme on Twitter, we've proven this, and we have stats around this. Your employees pay attention and then they share it. Right? And that's like the best thing I can ask for, is that it goes viral in an office, that people share it. So how do you capture their minds? How do you make it more than a tick box? How do you make it more than just policy? Policy is level 1, tick box and audit is level 2, but hearts and minds is level 3, and we should all be aiming for level 3. That's the only way you're actually going to see ROI from your programs.
Okay, great. So with that said, we will now poll the audience one last time, and then we'll get into the audience questions.
Great. So as a reminder, when we ran the poll the first time, 70% were in favor and 30% were opposed. And here are the results for the second poll.
65-35. All right. Okay, perfect.
So now I kind of want to ask the viewers if it's because we were talking about what makes an effective training and why the ones they're using might not be effective, or if they're suddenly like, well, forget all this, they don't even need to learn it.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the problem with these polls. We don't have the context, right?
I know, I need some context. I'm really curious about that 35%.
Right?
Okay.
Would have
So,
thought you were much more like persuasive than I was. So
Never.
okay, so we've got some questions here, but before we get into the audience questions, I had one which I thought would be interesting for both of you. So we talked about this kind of academically, a little bit more as a detached, neutral observer of these things, but I want to get a little bit specific here. So I have a family friend, right? It's one of my mom's best friends, and I see her on Facebook, and every time I see her on Facebook, it's one of these posts that's like, from fake Southwest Airlines, put a comment here and we'll send you a gift bag, or from another fake business. And it's like so obvious that these aren't real and that they're a scam. And I've gotten to the point where I just stop even bothering to drop in the link to the Snopes article saying how obviously fake this is. But I think this really speaks to this idea of, you can tell someone over and over again, this is obviously a scam. This is how you tell it's a scam. But then a week later, they do the same thing. So I guess the question becomes like, what is the approach on something as simple as this, as simple as someone just falling for this scam, both from like a security awareness training perspective, but also like, what is the human problem here for someone to keep doing this over and over again? What's missing? Whoever wants to start with that one.
you can start, Catherine.
Cool. So I think that's a very interesting sticky wicket right there. And I think part of that is because currently brands are spending a ton of money to engage with customers online. They know online is the future. That's where the digital advertising, they can actually get clicks and measurements. They can pull all sorts of like, AI conversational, like who are my customers? They can enrich it with third-party data. Brands are spending a ton of money on this. So, we are being conditioned as consumers within this technology, social media environment to start engaging with the brands that we like online. So that's kind of the underpinning of what we're dealing with, which is people are now sharing these things because there are sort of like, in the last 5 years, if you look at marketing technology and how amazing it's gotten in terms of engaging people, it's like completely bananas. So users are in this really challenging place. So I can totally understand, is it your mom's friends, cousins, uncles, former college roommate? Okay, so I can totally understand that.
Security through obfuscation, yeah.
Look, and my quick answer is this: it's not about the scam. Like, so everyone wants to train to the scam, train to the scam, train to the scam. And I'm like, look, I tell users that about 20% of customer service accounts on Twitter and Facebook are fake. And that alone makes people go, are you kidding me? So for me, it's like, I want to train you into the mindset. I want to train you into the posture. I want you to start understanding, are you going to the good side of town or bad side of town? And as far as I'm concerned, social media is the bad side of town. Lock your doors, roll up your windows, and let's figure out what we're doing. Like, you have to have the right posture. And for me, frankly, anytime you open up a computer, you should have that posture. And we've just been trained, and we've gotten into some behavioral tactics that have been, I'd say, encouraged by our digital overlords to become a consumer capitalist society where surveillance data is kind of king. We have to start taking ownership of that back. And that's not a train to the scam. That's a train the user and get them to realize where they are, what they're doing at all times. So it's a bigger problem than just one social media account, but it's a really good example.
So Karen, did you want to add anything to that?
I think what I'm going to add though is, and it goes back to that article I read earlier today, is that it's also a generational difference. And I think organizations specifically have to figure out how the different generations use technology, because that's what makes one group, like your mother's cousin's friend from college who has a boyfriend and a niece, excuse me, more susceptible than maybe that 22-year-old intern that you've got. So you have to individualize it, and you have to figure out what makes sense for the different types of users you have. You can't just say, don't click on a link. It's clearly a lie. Here's the Snopes. Reason you can't do that, they're not going to pay attention because you just told somebody publicly they're wrong. So, I mean, it's, and nobody likes that. So,
That's right.
honestly, at the end of the day, it's about figuring out the mindset, as Catherine was saying, to get people into, and how to get them to do the right thing in a way that makes them feel good about themselves.
Okay. So Noah, I think we've probably got time for 2 questions. And I see there's a bunch also coming in. So what we'll do is, for any of the questions we don't get to, I'll make sure to send them to both of our guests so that they can reply to you individually. But Noah, if you wanted to read off 2 of these, we can do that before we end.
Sounds great. And thank you everyone for your questions. We got quite a bit, but we only have about 10 minutes left. So we'll ask this one first, which is, we talked a lot about educating the end user, but what about making sure the executive staff is on board, which in return will help reinforce policies for education? Have you found getting executives on board to be challenging?
Yes. Yes and yes. So I think, look, okay, so my quick answer to this is that this, I think, is a big challenge for IT. It's a big challenge for cybersecurity. I think that you guys are coming to the table at a disadvantage when it comes to the executive education and executive experience. What I mean about that is, most people that I know at the CEO level that have been CFOs, CEOs, COOs, they have all gotten executive coaching. They have all had tons of presentation experience. They have all had sales experience, right? And when you get to that level, convincing the board of directors on these complex, technical, risk-based challenges that you can't always prove, like, how do you prove that you're saving somebody? It's like proving the value of a lifeguard, right? You don't prove it until you actually get out there and save a life. And a lot of times we save stuff every day, but you can't really explain it to the board in a sexy way. Back to Karen, she used to be the compliance officer. That's not the most popular Halloween costume, sexy compliance officer.
No, it really isn't.
Right.
Try first-year college writing instructor to engineering first years.
Mm-hmm.
In conjunction with that, and you have like really bad sort of self-esteem for a really long time.
So I think the thing you need to do, but I think the part of it is, let's get the skill set in cybersecurity up, or again, bring in people who can help you write those conversations, tap into your peers in the business. As Karen said earlier, this is a team sport. We all need to start working with HR and different business functions and getting to know them. And I think even informal conversations, coffees, building relationships and stakeholder relationships over time definitely helps. But it's true, this is gaining importance in the in the board. People are starting to put cyber experience on the board, but it's still an uphill battle. So I've rarely found somebody who says, absolutely, our board is totally on board with this and we're going to give you more budget. Usually there are multiple months of conversations to increase budget in this area.
And I think the other half of that is also, when I was talking earlier about getting the people in the weeds talking to their bosses and saying, I can't do this. My employee isn't doing this right, and I know we're not doing what we need to do. What can I do? How can I be a better manager? And raising it up, it has to be grassroots. If you're talking about internal corporate politics, it's just as grassrootsy as, waves hands wildly. You have to get everyone on board. The C-suite doesn't necessarily understand. You have to talk their language. You have to tell them, okay, I did insurance for a long time. Talk about it as a cost savings, an operational cost savings. If my employees know how to do it this way, we will have, less friction. We will have, better security. And it's really about positioning it and kind of marketing it to them in their language.
Okay. Noah, do we have one more?
Yes. So final question here, and we might have hit upon this a little bit earlier, but we can go a little bit more in depth. Given the increasing sophistication of attacks both aimed at employees and at systems, as well as the difficulty of addressing first-day vulnerabilities to education, why wouldn't it be better to invest our precious resources on security automations that operate 24/7, 365 and can be self-learning?
Oh,
Look,
okay.
I get it. I get it. Like, I totally get it. And it would be great if any of that has worked in the last 10 years.
Exactly.
And I think just like water, humans will find a way around it. We always find a way around it. Humans are the best at finding a way around it. Like I give stuff to my kids and they always find a way around it. That's like my favorite thing. I'm like, you guys hacked into the Wi-Fi again. Good for you. It's awesome. You know, and I think it's that human error that's going to do it. There's no amount of monitoring, UBEA, there's no amount of network packet. I mean, you just can't. And I think that that doesn't protect you from malicious insiders taking a notebook full of IP. That doesn't protect you from, you know, stuff that's happened, numerous faults and failures that are fully human error. So do I think that those tools are great? Yes. Do I think they're overpriced? Absolutely. Do I think technology can solve all these problems? Absolutely not. No way. No way, no how.
No, because at the end of the day, it's humans who are driving the technology. We even know that ML and AI come with biases based on the algorithms because they're created by people who have biases. Everybody has a bias, so your automation is going to have a bias. You know, what is your risk tolerance? Your risk tolerance is set by people at the end of the day. So at every step, you have to keep in mind that there will always be a human element. No matter what the automation is, it's created by a human. So it can make a mistake because humans make mistakes. It's what we do.
The other thing, I think there's a bigger, you know, sorry to step on your toes, Karen, but I think that when we also look at it from slightly a larger angle, which is it's not just about the company, because again, your workforce is going to change over time. And the competencies is that we have to upskill an entire workforce and then have them go out and be the champions to protect their families, to protect, other vulnerables, right? So look at it this way. I look at it like an employee benefit. If my employees are more cyber secure in their personal and their professional lives, that can only increase productivity. So if you're a small business and your chief of operations is about to buy a house and their down payment gets taken by wire fraud, do you think they're going to be a productive employee for the next month? What about identity theft? That can take people 3 years to get over. Do you think you're going to have a happy, safe, healthy workforce if someone is so stressed out they're putting themselves into, 7th level of adrenal fatigue? Do you think they're actually going to be working harder for you and your company if this stuff happens? This is just about, it's not just, I don't want to say benevolence, but there really is like hey, we know how bad the cybercrime is. We need to give people the tools and skills and knowledge and context so they can start protecting themselves, their lives, and the people they love. There's nobody else who's going to step in and do this. If you think the government's going to do it, I've got a bridge to sell you.
And you know what? You can't even rely on the next generation coming up because a lot of the teachers and stuff, they don't know this either. You know, I spent a lot of time with my kids' school, elementary school, and they were great and everything, but like things like, don't leave your Google password saved on your browser in the library. They don't know that. They don't know how to teach that. They don't understand how it works. So part of my philosophy is the concept of cyber sustainability, because in the same way we talk about the environment, we need to talk about cybersecurity. We talk about data leaks, pollution leaks, polluted data, all of these things, they're not any different. And if you want to have a business that is going to be sustainable long-term, everyone from, your guy who's in your office to his kid who could be using your laptop and downloading something on his device at home. What do you know he's doing? You don't know if that 10-year-old is on TikTok. Not that I have an 11-year-old who uses TikTok or anything, but you don't know. And you have to make sure that everyone in that family is invested in cybersecurity if you want your business to be cyber sustainable.
Excellent. Well, with that, let me hand it off to Anna to wrap it up.
Thank you, Nate. Thank you, Karen and Catherine. And that concludes our debate. We'd like to thank both Karen and Catherine for participating today. We'll be sending a link to the recording, and be sure to join us for the next episode of the Great Debate happening during Predictability 2021 on October 22nd. Predictability 2021 is a half-day virtual event showcasing what IT and security teams can do right now to make 2021 more predictable. To register, you can click on the link that I just sent in the chat. Our great debate session at Predictability will feature Alan Alford, CISO at NTT Data Services, and Taylor Lehman, partner at Side Channel Security. The two will debate what the #1 cybersecurity priority should be in 2021. This series is sponsored by Axonius, the cybersecurity asset management company that gives customers a comprehensive asset inventory, uncovers security gaps, and automatically validates and enforces policies. To try Axonius free for 30 days or to get a demo, go to axonius.com. Finally, we're excited to be making a donation to Black Girls Code on behalf of Karen Walsh and a donation to the Ladies Hacking Society on behalf of Catherine Goldman. Thank you all for joining, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.